Okay, so hello again. So we're looking now at the feasibility checklist and what that will mean for you now. You know, this is a bit of a voyage of discovery for me as well, to be honest with you. I've not spent a lot of time looking at this section, so I'm going to work through it with you and let's see how we would approach this. But the first thing is, remember, if it's not that box isn't ticked, there isn't really a feasibility checklist. If it is ticked, then there will be a feasibility checklist. So I'm going to guess here, Chris Ashfield may have a better idea about this, but we would use this more likely when we are at the stage of creating an illustration, because then we'll talk about what's being included in the feasibility checklist. At least we will have the data then to be able to use that. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to assume that we are using the feasibility checklist, and I'm going to tick the box. Okay, and then suddenly we have all the things that are included and excluded within a feasibility study. Okay, and in most cases you will never have to change these, okay, because they will be absolutely exactly as they're stated here. But there will also be some occasions when you do have to change them, and that's typically where either we've been prevented from doing that thing for some reason, or the client themselves is taking it on themselves to do that. First example, straight up, is going to be DNO application. We will always do a DNO application unless, of course, the customer says, I'm going to do the DNO application for you, in which case we will change that to excluded. So I click the drop down. We would ignore none. These aren't mandatory fields, by the way. There's no red flash on them, but it's of course we've got to put something in there. So it's either excluded, included, or NA. You would leave it as included, of course you would. Planning prior approval notification, that is of course included. Usual story, if it's not included, you change it, you exclude it. Site survey, electrical, so that's always going to assume that for the money that they pay for the feasibility study, there will be an electrical site survey, whether it's that done by Alex Wynn or whether it's done by one of the electricians, it's being done and that's included. Drone survey, again, that's included. I think there's an I here, so I'm going to hover over the I. So subject to being outside of CAA restricted zone. So of course what that means is that the drone survey will not be conducted if the drone pilot, in this case Alex, and there are lots of rules and regulations about that, he can't just pick up a drone and go and fly it. He has to have licensing, he has to have insurance, he has to have various other bits and pieces, and so he will follow those rules, and if he's barred from doing it, he will make a note of that. So let's see what the drop down says. It says none or excluded. Okay, so if he's prevented from doing it, he's going to put down that that's been excluded. Desktop structural assessment, usual story there. You know what that means. But of course, if there needs to be a proper structural assessment, then that's going to be extra. But this is the one that's being done by, I think they're called, is it KB2? You'll know better than I do, but it's the one where the minimum level of structural assessment will be included. That's fine. Then you've got detailed designs, so of course there'll be a PV sol done for it, of course there'll be AutoCAD designs done for it, and those things will be included as you might expect. There will additionally be, within the AutoCAD detailed designs, there will also be electrical design, and those will be as part of this as well. Chris will produce those when he's doing the feasibility report. Then you also have the final proposal with guaranteed price, and that's your bit. Okay, so the final, it says final proposal, but it's actually a final quote, and the guaranteed price is that we stand by that quote. This is why it's important that you would put on there the 14-day duration for it, because they need to act within that time. If they don't act within that time, they need to know that the quote no longer binds, and that they would need to contact us to arrive at a better price. Okay. Now we get into the areas that are excluded. Okay. So what's excluded? Okay, it's going to be the full planning application. Of course it is. It's going to be the supply upgrades required by the DNO. It's going to be disbursement and official fees, and it's going to be on-site structural survey. So if any of those things are a requirement, they are excluded, and they're automatically excluded. If, for example, you're doing a deal with a customer and he says, you say a full planning application is going to be necessary, then I guess you would speak to design team and say, we're going to need to do a full planning application here. How much is that going to be? They come back and they say to you, well, that's going to be an extra £3,000 for the sake of argument. Then you need to amend upwards the feasibility study price. No longer is it just £2,000, it's £2,000 plus £3,000. It's £5,000 in total. And then that suddenly becomes included. And again, you hover over that, and you click the included there. Okay, so there you go. That's how you would complete the feasibility checklist. Once you're past the stage of a feasibility, you don't need to do that. Once you are, if you're doing a tender, there's no feasibility anyway, so you don't need to do that. But this is specifically when you are doing the illustration phase for a new customer, and you're trying to get them to sign up to a feasibility study. This is how you would show them what the feasibility, what's included within the feasibility study and price they're paying for. So again, thanks very much. We're gonna bypass quoted items next. I'm going to move on to a few more mandatory fields before we finally come back to quoted items, because of course there is a separate video about how to create the quoted items section, but I'll come back to that in just a moment.